Hello and welcome to Season 6, Episode 39 of the Dualistic Unity Podcast. We are doing this live because we were going to do an episode on Friday, but frankly, we just weren't feeling it. And I think it's really important to recognize, when you're doing things because you're enthusiastic about them, because you have something to say or that you have something to express versus doing it because you think you should. And so we're going to do this episode where we would normally record Dualistic Unity Raw. It's a Sunday morning. Neither Andrew nor Amanda were aware of the fact that I was going to introduce this as a live episode. I want to start this one off, actually, from the start, because I had an insight earlier this morning, and it's been growing. And not an insight so much as, I guess, a deepening of how I see life and reality, humanity, myself, really. It's so funny. I know as a parent, it's easy to get really caught up in looking at physical growth, that we are growing physically as beings. And that's true in nature with animals and mammals and everything else, that we are growing physically. But what's also true across the board is that as we grow physically, our awareness grows as well. The awareness of our entire body grows, the awareness of our environment grows, the awareness of ourselves grow. And so I think that it's really easy to forget that when we're talking about growth, it's not just the physical. It really is the growth of our awareness, because any animal that doesn't grow its awareness along with its body doesn't survive. And so awareness and growth go hand in hand. And I think that's really important, because when we are young, we are at our most vulnerable. We have the least awareness in terms of the environment that we're a part of, how to use our body, even, having physical faculties, the physical ability to do things. We lack that as well. So we have no awareness of those things because we haven't had a chance to explore them. And so in that state, we feel incredibly insecure. But it's because there is a lack of awareness. There is a lack of understanding. There's a lack of ability to align with reality. And so it makes sense to me that when we drink, for example, or when we become deliriously sick, and all of a sudden our awareness is sapped, it's just drained from us into this thing, suddenly we revert to our childlike state. Suddenly we start going back to that insecurity, that vulnerability. And isn't it funny? Nothing has changed except a lack of awareness.
And so on the flip side, being more aware of things, with if alcohol cuts that awareness on both sides, like the awareness of yourself and what you're expressing, and then the awareness of just like situational awareness, then, the flip side can be almost like more intense because you're more aware of both sides of the environment and your impact and sway on the environment. And I think, just being willing to look at that and see that and realize where you're aware of things and I don't know, not looking at them, but also not doing things because you should, because if there is sensitivity, absolutely. But, when you look for something, it can feel like there's always something, you got to do in order to let yourself go, or in order to relax, or, you have to take steps. And there's, I think, like a moment to moment sensitivity for sure, and self-honesty with things that's felt. But I think there can be almost like an obsession with needing to do an additional thing, on top of just, being aware and attentive to where you're at, being willing to just be involved in the experience that you're in. Like yesterday when we were at karaoke and stuff, I could almost feel when I started thinking that I should be doing something on top, I wasn't doing enough. I had to do, an extra thing in order. I couldn't just be relaxed, couldn't just be involved. And so I think if we are attentive to where we're at, and we basically want to be in the place that we're in, it's a lot easier to be attentive to it. And that's a lot of the line. And that's when, you know, your mind will start coming up with stories about things. And so, yeah, when you're being more responsible, and I think understanding that like all of your choices are yours, all of the decisions that you make are yours, like there's no one else to pass any of those to. Like every choice that you make, it is your decision. As much as you feel like, oh, well, you know, this, you know, parents this, family that, friends this, these people, you know, said this. And it's like at the end of the day, all of the choices that you make are yours. And taking that responsibility can be just really important. You know?
It feels a lot harder to say that the choices come from you when you're not judging them. You know, when you want to find someone to blame, you know, you want to find someone that is the cause of that choice, because if they're the source, then they're also, you know, they're the one that you can blame, you know, whether it's a friend or a circumstance or a lack of experience or whatever it may be. It's just you've judged the choice, and because you've judged the choice, now you want to blame someone for that choice because it was bad. And so now you have to find the bad person that made the bad choice happen. And it just sounds like a very very rudimentary story that, you know, sounds like a tall tale or a some kind of bedtime story with a monster. You know, it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful because you believe that story. And of course you believe the story. You wrote it. And we forget that that's why it's so believable, because it's written by our own fears. And then our fears can be so convincing because we don't even realize how you claim the fear, but you don't claim the choice.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is, you know, it's really easy to, as Andrew said, react. You know, you feel that fear, and so you go chasing a solution. You try to find a way to get rid of the fear, or to, you know, do something that makes the fear go away. I say kind of the same thing. The point is you do something about the fear. You run from the fear. You face the fear. You act on the fear. You basically reinforce and perpetuate the fear. You know, and it's such an easy itch to scratch. But if you don't, then something else happens. And I think that that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. If you allow yourself the time and the space, your awareness of the situation and the moment that you're a part of grows. That's it. That's all. But so easy, it's so easy to get caught up in the idea of yourself. It's so very easy to get caught up in the idea of control and to get caught up in the idea of being more. It's easy to reach for those thoughts instead of just watching them and being informed by them. Because there's a lot to be learned from those thoughts. There's a lot to be learned from your thoughts about how little you are, you know, how much you don't know, how much skill you don't have, how much you're not enough, you know, any of those things. There's so many things that you can learn from that, because we're all going through them. We're all going through them. I said this the other day. I think it was in a Raw episode, but when I run across human beings, I really do relate from the perspective of being a human being. I don't need to know all the details. I know it's fucking hard. It's hard to be a human being. There's a lot involved. There's a lot, you know, emotions and everything else. The urge to be intellectual rather than authentic. There's just so much. And so when I meet somebody, I just feel for them right away, regardless. And even if they're being judgmental, even if they're being somebody who's abrasive, there's a reason for that. And I feel for them. Doesn't mean I'm going to tolerate it all the time. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to be honest with people. And sure, there's all of that. But the point is that it's sitting through the discomfort. It's sitting through those moments. Like a good example was yesterday. We went to a karaoke contest. And I say contest, but it was all in fun. Like it was fucking hilarious when they introduced everybody as like the finalists in Nanaimo. Everybody was just kind of invited last minute by the DJ. Like, hey, do you want to come? There was no semifinals or anything like that. But the idea of it being a contest, being on a stage, being in the middle of the city's largest park, with a sizable amount of people
Oh,
there.
yeah.
All of those thoughts popped into my head, all of them. And rather than reach for them myself as I used to do, I suddenly felt a tremendous swell of empathy for every contestant. And so I thought it was fascinating that they asked us, okay, everybody who's competing or everybody who's in the contest, go backstage. But everybody who was in the contest are the biggest karaoke enthusiasts in the entire town. And so it seemed really weird when the first person went up to sing and nobody who is in the karaoke community was up front of the stage, able to cheer them on.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that.
Yeah.
And so I just left the designated area and we all kind of did a hostile takeover of the front of the stage. Like we all just went, we're mutinying, and we left. And that was it. And immediately the energy picked up and the people on the stage felt better. And the whole time ended up being better. But once upon a time, I wouldn't have done that. I would have been too lost thinking about how I felt, my fears, my insecurities, instead of looking at them, not taking them personally, and then realizing, fuck, we're all going through this. And it was a great time. It was a great time. But it's just a little example, of how easy it is to make it about you, to actually just start thinking about yourself, thinking it's going to get you somewhere when in fact it just limits your awareness of the situation as a whole.
Yeah. And I noticed that too with drinking sometimes. Like it can almost ease the one side, because in those situations, we had two or three drinks at that point, but dancing kind of in the middle of that karaoke area, like it was a great time, absolutely. And like I could feel the same sort of stuff where it was like, holy shit, there was a time that there's no way I would have done this in front of people after, like, maybe after 12 beers or something. then there would be a willingness to do that. But like kind of knowing that you can look at a crowd of people, and same for the singing, and make assumptions about what they're thinking about you, and like they're always just your own, like how you're seeing yourself in that moment, you're immediately going to assume, despite like all of it being a question mark. Like you don't know what's going on in someone else's head. You don't know the thoughts that they're thinking. You don't know like how they're looking at you or seeing you. And so when we were there, like there was to get on a stage and sing karaoke, like, and to say stuff and to, be a little bit high doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there was a point that there would have not even been an ability, like the sort of fear that would overcome me would just paralyze me. And it hit me yesterday, because like I had some of that stuff leading up to that, and I just didn't focus on it. Like I didn't try and get rid of it, like, lump in my throat. I'm like, yeah, that can be there. Like, oh, I'm nervous. Yeah, that can be there. And it's like not trying to get rid of or suppress that so much. It's just looking at it and being like, yeah, it's cool. That can be there. Like I'm still just, singing for myself, dancing for myself, talking for myself. Like when you don't know how it's going to be received, how it's going to be looked at, how you're going to be viewed, like, might as well kind of focus on your own experience in the sense of just being relaxed. But I don't know. I guess it can be tougher to do that when you're thinking about yourself too. There's kind of a tension that can go with that immediately. So it's like, it is looking past that to help you relax a bit. But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's we're looking past it because there's more than that in the moment. The way that you're feeling, your perspective, your opinions, your feelings, they're happening, but there's a lot more that's also happening in that moment. And when you're, I guess when you remember that, it's easier to see past you. It's almost like noticing that there's more than you in the room, makes it a lot easier to see other things, because that realization just kind of widens your view. It widens that attention. That attention grows. And with more attention, you give yourself the best shot to make the most of the moment, because you're making the most of everything that's in that moment. And there's more than just the idea of you or just one perspective. And in that, the moment feels fuller and deeper and just a lot more available, and a lot more, it almost feels like there's like you're feeling the potential before it's been shaped.
Absolutely. And again, it's a sensitivity thing. It really is. It develops over time. But I wanted to talk about this because we're coming up to the end of season 6 here. And we've had a lot of conversations since season 1. And you'll notice in the last, I don't know, season, maybe 2, we've really walked away from the topic of being everything, of being God. We haven't had a lot of that conversation lately. And the reason is because it can become another way to think about yourself. It can become another way to just continuously reassure the idea of yourself that you know you're in control, all of your assumptions are true, you have value, you have the right way, you have all of that. And it becomes just another fucking trap where you find yourself going around the internet begging people to validate you in the comment section and then arguing back and forth because you don't feel validated. And so I wanted to talk about this because we've had this conversation recently. As much as it is true that you are reality itself, that you are existence, are you truly everything? And what does that mean? And I mean that sincerely, because as soon as you say, I am the all, I am the everything, you have an idea of that. You have formed a concept of that. And that concept is a limitation. That concept is not the reality. That is an assumption based on what you think you know, on the experiences that you have had in your lifetime. And so when you start going down that road of I am everything, you are really still struggling for a sense of value. Because the reality of being everything is the same as being nothing at all. It's what you already are. It's not something you have to think about. And as soon as you do, you've limited it. You've cut it in half, at least. And so I think it's very dangerous to start thinking, I am the all of everything. I am everyone. And as much as it's true, your idea of it is not.
No. Because as soon as that becomes an idea, it becomes like what you see everything through. And it's very much like yourself. Like it absolutely can become that idea that then you got to try and convince other people of, or then almost assume like if someone else isn't seeing things like that or recognizing that, like it can be it's a very fascinating thing to like think about yourself like that, and then look at everyone who doesn't see that as like less than. It's alarming. And like there are times where I've realized that in myself over the last couple of years, in ways like it's the idea becomes a different idea, kind of makes you feel better to kind of carry you through things and just distract yourself from there's still no sensitivity when there's an idea, or there's a lot less. It's not black and white, of course, but there's significantly less when you're looking through a veil of something. Like, I want to think about myself in some way to like get me through this sort of thing. And you can, like, I was feeling that a little bit when we were drinking a bit yesterday, like feeling better about, it was like a different idea came into play, or like the thoughts quiet. And I was very aware of like the difference in experience between like being high, being on something else, like being drunk. Like it's not so much an awareness that's then you can relax through, but it's just your mind kind of quiets, and it's not so much there talking, but it's still impacting things in the background. But yeah, I mean, as soon as there's some sort of idea of yourself that you're like focused on or trying to defend or maintain, like there's a lot that goes with that. There's protection, that goes with that. This sense of like rigidity in protecting it, because you got to be careful. It's like you're a step or two behind reality all the time, because you're trying to like be in control of yourself, and like just your ability. And I don't know, sometimes it feels like there's like a gap between like being that step behind and being like at the forefront, like at the front of your face, front of your eyes, like paying attention, being aware that it's not just you involved in situations. Like there's a lot happening, and to focus on yourself at all, like you're going to keep missing things that are happening over and over and over. And it's like it can feel like you sink deeper into that, but it's still in the moment. It's still the focus. And it feels like sometimes the deeper it goes with that it can almost feel like you're further from being here, from being able to be attentive, from being able to relax, and like, start now. And like, because the story almost gets bigger, the swell, the assumptions, they build, and then that turns into, likely depression. And the idea just gets so strong. It's like you assume there's got to be a way out, something you got to do in order to let that drop. And I think for me recently, it's been like, just not being like, not caring so much that it's been focused on for a while. Like, I can let myself be like, it's kind of like a not giving a fuck about how it's been, but like taking the responsibility as well, because it comes with that. Like there's no free lunches, like with that awareness of yourself, more self-honesty, like it comes with responsibility for things. And if you don't want to look at that side of it, like the awareness, sensitivity, like it doesn't go with it. Like there is a necessary balance with it that you can't really escape if you're not being responsible, or that you can.
It is interesting to think about the I am everything, I am all kind of concept, because it's like I remember like just this morning thinking about how little I've been stretching, right? So I'm paying attention to one body, and I don't even pay attention to everything that's happening in it. So imagine if I was like, oh, I am everyone and everything, and I've got enough attention, I will keep track of all of me. I will know what everyone's feeling. We will always be able to. It's like you barely do that for the one body you're living in now. So it's just hubris, a little bit of hubris to think, I've got this. I won't ever drop the ball, and there is no ball to drop, but it's just that there is no way that you could pay attention to every nuanced thing at the same time from the one perspective. And as much as you feel like you have to, you don't. As if I'm paying attention to what the moment feels like from the perspective of Amanda, that is my whole moment. That is everything that I need to pay attention to, because that is still connected to everything else and everyone else's quote unquote moment. And it's funny because we were chatting with a friend who is an actor who has been acting for a long time. And, many people that are in the acting profession will forget that we all put on a role. We all put on a show. We all have a script. We all have costumes. We all put on these roles, and we change them out. So they're not so different from people who are not on a physical, legit stage, because it very much feels like life is a stage and we are always changing roles. It's just that sometimes we take the role too seriously, and we can always remind ourselves that as easily as we picked up the role, we can easily put it down, and you don't have to replace a role in order to feel like it's authentic in its performance.
Yeah, that's very true. Wanted to go back to what you were saying there about, being all. I think we forget how that works, because again, we want to make it about us. We really do. We want to be like, I am God. I can change the world. I know the way.
I went from me to invincible me.
Straight up. But I mean, and you'll know that you're going in that direction when you start thinking that other people should change according to what you think they should do. Because then you're in the cerebral idea. That's when you're like, yes, I'm God, and therefore my intelligence is intelligence itself. And it's yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, the God you is already doing everything perfectly. That's really it. Like there's, which means that there's no effort involved. It's not like, the part of you that you're saying is the all of everything isn't taking notes. It's not, thinking to itself, oh, how are things going on Earth right now? Oh shit, maybe we should turn left. Like it's not thinking in that way at all. That's all us being in control. That's all our mentality of, this is what's happening and this is the action that I think I'm going to perform. But that's all small scale thinking, right? Like that's all disregarding all the influences that have helped you come to that conclusion, right? And that's what I mean when I say that the reality is that we are all cells in a body, right? But our intelligence is working all the time. The cells inform each other via sensitivity. Those moments where you just bring up a subject and you don't know why, there's something happening there, right? Those moments when you go into a conversation and you don't know what to say, but it's because the other person is getting something off their chest, right? There is something happening there. And you might tell yourself a story, well, I'm insecure, that's why I don't know what to say. If I knew but more, I'd be saying this. But the simple fact is that that's all you just getting in the way again. You see what I'm saying, though? Like there's a difference between the awareness of existence and what you think the awareness of existence is. In the same way, there's a difference between intelligence and what you think intelligence is. See, we always equate intelligence to being clever. We equate intelligence to concepts. Memorization, feeling like we can be in control, bending our will to something, making it happen. This is how we gauge our ability to be intelligent. It's like, well, what separates humans? Well, our technology. Okay, so our ability to force our will on reality.
We're not the only ones who make tools, though, so it's not like...
But that's what I'm saying. But we tend to think that's what dictates intelligence. But reality has been existing and continuing on forever, right? There's intelligence in that. When mushrooms... basically the mycelium that informs and reinforces and supplies all the nutrients to other plant life, there's intelligence there. When we see ivy climbing up a tree but only climbing as far as it can get enough light and then stopping and going back down so it doesn't endanger the tree, like all of that is intelligence. It's just not the intelligence that we identify with, because there's no sense of control in that. Right? This is why that that fungus we were talking about, the slime that where they basically used this slime mold, and it had enough intelligence to redesign the Japanese railway system.
Oh yeah.
Right. So basically they just created a model of Japan, and they put food or nutrient sources where all the cities were. And then they introduced the slime mold
in relation to the population.
In relation to the population
so it was like a pile of oats.
And then the slime mold basically figured out how to connect all of those points of nutrients and resources, so that way all of the slime mold could use it the most efficiently. And it designed it better than the Japanese rail system. It was more efficient. There's intelligence there in terms of we find a way to do the thing effectively over time. But because humans have this immediate control, we tend to lose sight of the fact that intelligent change is happening over time. That's where the whole evolution thing came from, right? Survival of the fittest. Natural selection. It's not as simple as natural selection. Like there is a physical adaptation happening on a planetary level. It's not just one species to another. All those species affect other species. Right? There is a collective intelligence happening. But it's not the intelligence that you get to claim. It's not the intelligence where you get to go, I am that. As soon as you do that, you've stepped out You've stepped out of your own intelligence for the sake of self-soothing, for the sake of feeling like you're in control, for the sake of feeling like you can get what you want and you know what that is, and the whole fucking narrative to perpetuate the story of you. And that's the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need that story? Do you need to be everything? Do you need to be God? Because if you do, you're trying to be an idea because you think you're an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what takes away all of your ease. It's what removes your ability to empathize in the moment and actually be of service,
Mm-hmm.
not to someone, not to people, but by virtue of the fact that you're not putting yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
not putting the fiction of you first.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And that, yeah, like trying, like, because with that comes this feeling of like the responsibility goes towards changing people, convincing people, getting people to understand something instead of being yourself. Like there's absolutely a trade. And again, like I'm resonating with this. So like in my experience with that sort of like, it was pretty much it was 3 years ago that like I realized, oh, like Andrew was this narrative story, that I had been telling myself over and over, and it was based on the past. And so like if I'm here, then maybe I'm not, this character, this story. And then that progressed into, the podcast and the thought, like discussions about things and this sense of like being everything. And it can just turn into straight up another idea. And I almost, like yesterday when we were at karaoke and kind of dancing, there was almost like a cycling through different stories. I remembered different stories from like middle school that I would tell myself, like how I saw myself in 6th grade. It was totally different than how I viewed myself, when I was 18 or 25. And it was this progressive story. And I was remembering, times even in elementary school where it was like this story and this difference in story and like real. And I had a point before that, I'm not remembering right now, but like just realizing how much that's been at the forefront. And then more recently, it was that sense of like straight up, oh, it's like, and everyone's got stories they tell themselves and narratives and stuff, but yeah, it can, that sort of sense of, oh, being everything, it can make you feel good about yourself. When you think about yourself, when you're alone, when you're in absolute control, when you're not in, even a conversation, with a bunch of people. It's like the ideas, the stories don't help you through life, through anything. And because before then, yeah, there were different stories, but it wasn't like as much of a gap sort of story, like it was more just, I don't know, being myself in a sense, not as disconnected from things. Because if you're relying on a very strong idea that like isn't based in reality really as much, like it can disconnect you a lot, just disconnect you from moments, from experiences, like when you're talking to someone and they're just like, like, oh, sorry, I just spaced out for a bit. Like a lot of times that's thinking about how to have control, thinking about yourself in relation to, the situation and how to get what you want next, instead of like just being willing to not know that. Like you don't really know what you want, what's best for you. Like you don't have to focus on all of those things. You can, pay attention.
Yeah, I find that fascinating, and I really do, just because it's something that the mind, our sense of control, just doesn't want. It just doesn't like it, right, at all. But it's something that you realize more and more as you start to practice letting go, that your life, everything that you're looking for through control, is already available. Like it's already available, but it requires you to just let go. But that means let go of trying to feel good, let go of trying to feel like you're going to get what you want, and maybe accepting that you don't know what you want, right? Or that the want itself is coming from a place that you haven't reconciled, right? Like there's something to the recognition that if you wake up today and you go out into the world, and instead of trying to plan what the outcome of every scenario is going to be, you just float from one scenario to another, from one situation to another, without expectation, without it needing to be anything, you will find the most incredible shit happens in your daily life. It's awesome. Like I will go out in the day and then somehow end up talking to people I've never met before in conversations never saw coming that end up furthering things in my life. They end up enriching how I feel about my day. They end up, teaching me more about people. They inform the podcast. They do all these things. And again, like it's just me floating around, but that means being willing to say, go to a bookstore looking for a book. Somebody comes up to you and says, hey, do you know about such and such and such? And not going, fuck, I just want to find my book. It means not doing that. It means that moment is, oh, this is what's happening right now. This is what's happening right now. And I'm going to give it my attention wholeheartedly. Like perhaps it is more important than whatever I thought was important a moment ago, than the journey I had conceptually in my mind. This moment is real. This moment is the rudder of the ship. And we forget that. We get really caught up in trying to go, but it's not what I want. I want to go this way. If I waste time here, and there's the expression, if I waste time here, rather than realizing if you're not paying attention to this moment, you are wasting time here.
And realizing that it's like on you, it's on you whether or not you're attentive, because that sense of like, the floating around moment to moment, it's a different sort of experience. Like the willingness to be informed by your experience instead of trying to, parse things out. Like, oh, I absolutely know that if I do these things in this way, schedule this out, make this to-do list, do this thing, that like this is going to get me eventually down the road to the thing I absolutely 100% want. And like, you can just focus on that every single day and, appreciate your experience fully as well. But I guess it's always a balance, and there is no black and white with it. Like it's all gray area. And that I think is a big difference in not holding on to so much of a sense of, yourself and shoulds and shouldn'ts and all that, is like things become more of a gray area, because otherwise everything seems black and white. Everything. It's like, no, this you can't do this until this, like, this situation can't give it full attention because like this situation here instead. And it's like, no, your whole life can be, if it is being informed, like it doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be fully scheduled out, because it's never going to be, like the rigid schedule versus like the complete floating around. There's always variation, but it can be, I guess, easier to bounce around and float around when you're not focused so much on yourself and how you're doing. And then every situation gets a little bit lighter and easier, when it's not, oh, how am I doing? How am I going to do? How do I best get what I think should be happening out of this situation? Like, you really don't know. And like the roles that we play, even when we do feel like we're doing things absolutely incorrectly, there's still things happening even then. There's still things being realized, noticed, shifts happening, changes happening. And like, that's going to be going on regardless of what you're assuming, should be playing out. But yeah, it's like, how willing are you to just be focused and relax on your experience? Like that's your influence right there, is that focus.
I mean, there are so many examples where I was certain that things went horribly wrong, or I made the wrong choice, or I did something incorrectly, and it just led to an opportunity that I don't think I would have found otherwise, you know? And so all those moments that are so wrong are wrong from, you know, from that perspective that it shouldn't have happened that way. But everything everything keeps going, you know, and as much as we want to judge our progress is still being made. There's still change that's always happening. And so it's like, oh, you don't like what's happening? Wait 5 minutes. Most likely something else will be happening. You know, oh, you like what's happening? Wait 5 minutes. That will change, you know? Like, it's just whether you like it or don't like it is secondary. Life is happening regardless of your opinion, but your opinion is certainly informative. It doesn't have to feel oppressive. It doesn't have to feel like it's predictive, but it certainly is informing you of what that priority of that moment is. You know, so if you're not liking it, then the priority is that this moment is not enough, that in your opinion it should be something else, or you should be something else, or someone else should be different, but this moment as is not enough. And why is that? Right? Because you're so sure that it should be something else, and then what? You know, you don't get your way, and then what? Does life end? No, it keeps going. It is always going. It's just that we can make a pointless effort to try to hit some brakes, but all we're doing is just gritting teeth as change is happening. So I love the expression, you know, let go or be dragged. And it's not that you're dragged by some immovable force, some God that you haven't either recognized as you or something that's separate from you. It's that this moment feels like it's being dragged on because you're holding on to the concept and not paying attention to the moment. And it feels like pulling teeth.
You know, it's funny. Like, the reason I bring this up is because very often on social media or any of our platforms, somebody will reach out and they want to have the intellectual conversation about being everything, about all infinite perspectives and, you know, humanity coming together and all that stuff. And I understand from the point of view where that's coming from. It feels like you've made a lot of progress. You know, it feels like you're really like moving along, getting the understanding, knowing, quote unquote. But truth be told, over time, you start to realize that that conversation can become just as much an avoidance as everything else. It's not that the conversation itself doesn't have value, but it can become another way to avoid what the conversation's really talking about. This is why I love the expression that philosophy is the disease for which it should be the cure, because philosophy is just about looking at life, asking the questions, but then it becomes an intellectual exercise. You become a philosopher. And suddenly, all of that good stuff that came with asking questions and freeing yourself from assumption becomes another prison. And so, over time, I've realized that some of the most profound conversations I've had with people had nothing to do with the all of everything, and had everything to do with the conversation that we were having then and there, the ease that they were embodying, you know, the lack of concern about how they were perceived, the choices that they made for themselves. These things in a normal conversation scream wisdom far more than proclaiming yourself to be the all of everything. If I'm sitting down for a conversation with somebody and they keep going on and on about how they're everything, there's a lot of need there. There's a lot of need that still exists there. Whereas if I were to sit down with somebody who's never heard of being the all of everything and really didn't give a shit, was just happy to sit there on a park bench and enjoy watching the fucking waves, you know, or have a conversation about skateboards. Who knows? Even if they didn't know anything about skateboards, and be like, yeah, okay, let's fucking dig in. That person knows far more than the cerebral conversation will ever know. They may not even know that they know it. That's the beautiful part about it. There's no way for them to take credit for knowing what it is to just be themselves, to have those moments. And so I find it so funny that, you know, your average bushwhacker who spends his time alone in the woods just being practical, common sense, down to earth, salt of the earth kind of thing.
Mhm.
Far more grounded than most philosophers throughout history.
Mhm.
Fuck, than most religious and spiritual gurus. Straight up, because at least their relationship with you is based on the here and now. Not to say that they're always there. Sure, that conversation may take that person's life and just widen it. They might go, oh, that's what I've been doing this whole time. It's just chilling and being right. That's why I like nature, like that kind of thing. All of a sudden there's insight there, but it's not necessary. They're already enjoying their existence. They're already aligning with the moment that they're in. It has nothing to do with being an intellectual. It has nothing to do with being in the recognition or in the know. That's why I used to always laugh about people who are in the know but don't know what they're talking about. It's like, I'm in the know. I don't know what it is, but I know it. Like, that's just you wanting to feel better. Like, why so avoidant in saying you don't? Why is that such a threat? Like, why are you gravitating towards, no, I know. Because there's a reason.
Oh.
You don't have to claim anything at all.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like man, that sense of, because it can just be something you think about. It's just straight up another way to think about yourself instead of looking at it as more as like being a life liver. Like, how much of a life liver are you? And then talking about that, like, that's been such a stark difference, admittedly, for me moving to Nanaimo versus New York. Like, people are here are very like I can't, and it's just starting to settle in for me as we're like out and about interacting with more people. Like, the conversation, the pace of conversation is faster in a sense, because it isn't so much the curated like societal dialogue. Like, there was a way that you could almost be taught like a safe way to have conversations, and then there's, and I'm realizing when I'm kind of out and about seeing other people that we don't interact with, hang out with as much, that I'm remembering how often in conversations, like regular conversations, there would be like periods of quiet, and then someone would bring something up that they've been like reading about or a podcast they've been listening to. And then it's like sharing information about how individually each person is growing themselves, like becoming more in themselves, and talking about that, like, what your job is like a forefront of conversation almost all the time. Whereas I've noticed here that it comes up at points, but it's rarely the forefront of conversation. Like, there isn't, like, here there aren't like walls to conversations as much. There's so much more of a free flow, but you gotta be attentive. You gotta be in the conversation straight up, because if you're not, you keep missing everything, and there isn't like a structured thing to revert to so much. And I'm realizing now, like, oh yeah, this is our podcast. I can just talk about my experience that I've been going through here, obviously, and because it's hitting me more.
I just want to throw out there, though, don't move to Vancouver Island. It sucks
Yeah,
here.
pace is way too fast. Air is gross. People are awful.
Food's terrible.
Yeah. Just, and there's no karaoke. It sucks. And and like, seeing how vital it is to be attentive, to be relaxed, like it's a necessary component. Whereas for more of a structured societal, like, I don't know, societal norm type conversation, talking about, and not, again, this isn't like, because there's not a difference, there's not black and white, but the focus on just certain topics or just bringing things up as something to talk about, I guess that's conversation too, as I'm realizing. But like,
not often.
Yeah,
I mean, often conversations happen for a point.
Yeah,
like, you can feel it. You go into a conversation.
Yeah,
with somebody,
that's
and
more of it.
They're almost
It's
like just
true.
waiting to give you their business card. And I've met lots of people like that, straight up. I've actually had people tell me, if you meet somebody, you give them your business card.
Yeah.
If you meet someone, you give them your business card. It's
Mhm.
like, holy fuck, that's abrasive.
It's like that's
like, what if I don't want your fucking business card? What if having a conversation with me that didn't revolve around your need to do business is actually better for your life and mine? Right. But that's what I mean. Most conversations, people get into it for a point. I mean, this is the reason, like, there's a difference between, say, the corner lounge and the terminal pub, right? Terminal pub, a lot of intention. People are there looking to meet someone, looking to get laid, looking to find that partner, looking to find that validation. You can feel it because the conversation at the terminal is always very short and always very, direct. It's just like, are you the one I'm looking for? Are you the one? No, already lost interest. I'm going to move on. And that's what it feels like. Whereas you go to the corner lounge, you could sit there chatting with somebody for a fucking hour, and then they just fuck off. And then you run into them later on because they're not going anywhere. They know they're going to be here next week. They're not trying to meet anyone. They're here to sing. See the difference? And that's, I think, what you're feeling in terms of conversation. People sing more here, metaphorically.
Yeah, for sure. And that intention too. There's a difference when there isn't so much of an intent behind, like so much of when people aren't putting on so much of a show, they're not pulling from people as much. And like, especially moving from New York, again, it's not like everyone's different. And there isn't this generalization type thing. Just in my experience, meeting people, it's been a difference in people being a lot more relaxed in a lot of ways. But again, it's like I'm hanging out with different types of people here too. So
and
New York is less so. But yeah, and like noticing that as well.
Impact,
yeah.
Right? Like as you're changing your priority, the conversations that people can have with you are changing. How much of it is, Nanaimo? How much of it is you?
That's fair. Yeah. Because it goes kind of hand in hand with that too. But yeah, it's been really interesting, like just experiencing differences in conversation, especially, and like even like having long conversations where it's like that attention's gotta keep paying attention to, like, and it reminds me kind of like at bars, like my conversations, they would be longer but there was always a drive, there was always this deeper intention that was coming from like a strong sense of need. And now that sense of need isn't as strong, but it's still like it's almost more felt when it is there, instead of it being like a subdued constant so much. And you were mentioning the other day just like the differences when you're focused on structure and like having a sort of structure to your day, to your mind, to the way you think about yourself, being sure of your perspective. It's your mind's more of a prison, and when that isn't there, it can be more like quicksand, and it can, you can revert into that, like being disconnected more quickly, more easily, because there is more uncertainty. You're kind of floating around a little bit more. Things are less known, but it's understanding that it can be quicksand. Like if you're assuming that it's still that prison that it was in the structure, then it's like, oh, this is that structured thing, so this must be sure, because when it was structured, I was sure of that, but like I still wasn't sure of all that. When it feels more like quicksand, when you get lost in your head, lost in your thoughts, focused on something else, some other idea, your idea of yourself that you feel like you can think about, like it can pull you in quick, but then you can snap out of it just as quickly too.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. I'll pass it to Amanda right after this. The prison is the assumption that we know, right? So out of all of these perspectives that we could have, we know which ones are the right ones. We hold on to those assumptions of ourselves, of the world, of people, of so on and so forth, right? But as soon as you question those, as soon as you're willing to question any of them, now they all could be possible. And that's where that quicksand feeling comes from, right? Because if they could all be possible, are you going to fall back into that habit of believing any of them? Are you going to fall back into that habit of grabbing onto any of them? And that's the practice, is when you let go of the assumption, watch the habit to assume, because it's got a lot more to play with now.
Yeah, there's a lot more there. And yeah, because it opens it up to you said, all potentials. It's like, and if your mind wants to focus on something, then that'll be a new wall from like all the other potentials cycling through, like the ability to like use your mind as a servant instead of the servant master sort of thing. Like your mind is a incredible servant and a terrible master, and that's kind of the difference. Like, are you believing that your thoughts are true, that your perception of yourself is true, that your certainty about the world and right and wrong and what should and shouldn't be happening and all of your opinions, are you sure of that? Because if that's the case, then your mind's going to be that master. It's like the certainty is the guarantee that the story you're telling yourself, the thoughts in your head are correct. Whereas when your mind's more of a servant for yourself, you're willing to be uncertain, but then that comes with, willing to be sensitive to your environment and experience and, responsible for yourself. But it's like way more informative. And that's the difference, when I do feel more relaxed, is it feels more like, oh, it's action first, attention first, talking first, thinking is happening in the background back there. It's not it's not like thinking happens first and then you talk second, which is more of a logical approach to things. It's like I think about things and then I react. It's like, no, I react and using my mind, but because I'm sensitive and aware, I'm being informed, and then I can trust myself. But the logic is, and the philosophizing too, that's very much mind first. It's like, oh, I have a brilliant mind, beautiful mind. Yeah.
I know.
Instead of like not taking credit for it and being able to actually use your mind
and enjoy it
and appreciate it. Like, oh man. Yeah, it's and that's so much of how we think about ourselves too, is that those thoughts, at the forefront. It's like your mind is in the way of your experience of reality and your ability to really fully being involved in it and attentive to it and relax. It's like when your mind is first, it's that sense of, no, I know how to do this. I have this sense of control, this guarantee that if I think about these things in this way and, think about myself in this way and think about these, make the pros and cons list and focus on that. Instead, that's all replacing the sensitivity and the ability to like be informed by your environment, like in the moment, which is like moment to moment to moment. It's not something you can think about. It's not something you can try to control necessarily, but it's much different experience for sure. But
well, that's why it's so it's great to remind ourselves that it's moment to moment awareness, but in each moment you're always starting over, and in every moment there is nothing but potential. So it doesn't matter what you've done in the past or what you think about it or what you think could happen in the future. In this moment you can go in any direction, and then we talk about how it can sometimes feel like quicksand, because you're like, well, if anything can happen, it's like, that feels like it's almost risky. And it's like, yeah, but anything could happen isn't the one scary hypothetical that you're worried about happening. That's not anything. But that's a very specific example. Anything is potential, unscripted, undescribed. Anything could happen.
But what if it's this thing?
It's just as likely for things to go well. Why aren't you leaning on that hypothetical in the quicksand? Why does it feel like quicksand? Because it's not that you're feeling the anything, you're feeling the something that could go wrong. But we like to pretend that we're saying anything could happen. I'm terrified of one thing, but we're going to call that one thing anything so that I can look logical. I can look like I'm objective, like I'm being reasonable. It's like, no, the mind isn't necessarily a master when we're not paying attention to it, but it is an excellent warden. It is a wonderful storyteller. It does all those things. And then we say that we are mastered by those stories. We are under the control of our emotions. That's why logic has such good PR, because we think that logic is this intellectual, rational, reasonable method of control. And our emotions are usually more informative than the logical concept that we're holding on to. But we decide that the emotions, because they're quote unquote uncontrollable, they must be less valuable. But the emotions and the concepts are doing the same thing. They're informing you of the priority. What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing the concept? Are you paying attention to everything else that's happening? And you can feel that. And then when you feel that you haven't been doing that, okay, great. There's an opportunity. I can start right now. Doesn't matter if I caught myself lost in thought. I'm stuck sitting on a chair for 15 minutes, quote unquote doom scrolling for 4 hours. Doesn't matter. There is no such thing as wasted time, because everything is informing the moment that's unfolding, and every moment that's unfolding is informing the next one. So how is anything wasted? Where is this horrible scenario to avoid? Because even when I do think that my world has ended, what did end? The world of that concept. And what was born from that was unrealized, undescribed potential that wasn't funneled through another concept. And that felt light and free and risk free. Because what's the risk? What are we losing? You're never losing potential. You're never losing the moment. So what are we scared of? What's the risk? What could you lose? Only an idea. And then when you see that it's just a concept, you're like, okay, well, that's not so bad.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a practice. We had a conversation yesterday about intuition, and I thought it was fascinating because he was saying, like, well, I should follow my intuition. And it's like, right, but your intuition can be swayed by fear and desire. Like, your fear and desire is going to sway your intuition. You're going to create a bias. So now it's not your intuition; it's your intuition plus. It's your intuition plus a little ego.
Intuition asterisk.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely, exactly. May not perform as outpaced, but
results not guaranteed.
But this is where we come back to where we started, which is in attention. It's awareness now. So, as you're having a conversation, as you watch your insecurities pop up, as you watch your need to try and prove yourself pop up, as you watch yourself trying to gain a sense of control or value, as you watch these things pop up and you don't rise to them, there is another track of information that happens at the same time that informs the conversation. It informs your actions, but it's just through paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's where you find your intuition, in the moment-to-moment facing of your needs and fears.
Mm-hmm.
It's in looking at them, looking through them, and then acting accordingly. Because that's where you find your empathy, when you stop making it about you. This has been a fantastic episode. I'm really glad that we took the opportunity to do this. I know I did not announce it to anybody before we did this, but it's been just a great conversation. And I'm glad that we took the 2 days from Friday till now to come back to this conversation. Because again, like, there are times where if you're forcing it, you're just getting in the way of that intuition. Maybe be honest and say, oh, we're just forcing it. Give it some time. Maybe I don't know the right time. Maybe giving people an afternoon where we're not there and not living up to their expectations of us live streaming at a certain time is good for them too. And maybe it's not. Maybe we don't know. That's the point. Who are you living for? Your idea of others or your intuition right now? Are you actually being honest with yourself? Or are you just running from another fear towards another need? And you're the only one who can see that. But that's the point. It's very sobering when you really do look at it that way. And that's when your awareness grows. But we are going to wrap up this episode in a few minutes here. I just wanted to make an announcement because I'm very excited about this. Port Alberni is almost sold out. We only have 3 tickets left for the Port Alberni retreat, which is coming up on November 2nd. If you are interested in joining us for this retreat, it's November 2nd to November 10th. We've already said all the details, but in summary, there's a hot tub, there's a chef, there's a sweet gazebo, there's 2 national parks nearby. We're going whale watching. We've got massage, we've got yoga, we've got some live music. There's a pool table. We do nightly karaoke. It's pretty much the dopest experience. It's basically the sleepover you always wanted with the kind of people who could enjoy it with you. So much fun. If you can join us, check out the website, dualisticunity.com, or if you're watching the video, you can click on the QR code. These tickets are likely going to go fast, but don't worry, as we have some mini retreats that are being planned right now.
Yes.
Coming up for 2025. We will be listing the states and provinces where those retreats will be happening in the next week or so on Patreon. So keep an eye out for that. If you're not on Patreon already, highly encourage you to join us on Patreon. We do groups 5 days a week. It's a lot of fun. I know, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't know if I can get into a group and really have, anything to say. I'm kind of nervous or anything like that. It doesn't hurt to just jump into the group. You don't even have to turn your video on. You can just listen to how the conversation goes. And what you'll find is that it's not the way you think it goes, that it really is just a normal conversation. This isn't about high-minded spirituality as much as we do get into it from time to time. The fact is that you are far more important. The reality of you is far more important than the concept of everything.
Because the more you're willing to just to be to be you and just be yourself and not hold on to so many bars and expectations and certainty, about how much you're focused on. It can be very sobering, and it's important, to check yourself, I think, from time to time when you're focusing on yourself in a certain way and thinking about yourself in a certain way, or focusing on trying to, control something or make assumptions about something, and just be honest with yourself that they're coming from you, and you can use, other people to try and validate those opinions and perceptions, but they're all coming from you, really. So this has been a great episode. Really excited for that Port Alberni retreat, and be on chatting with you soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Could not recommend the Port Alberni retreat more. It is amazing, and it is an epic sleepover. Asterisk, no hand holding included. But
Space for Jesus.
A lot of good laughs and a lot of opportunities, as in every moment, to not make it about you and to see that life can feel so much more, can feel fuller, because the idea is such a small thing. It's such a small piece. And so when you let go of the idea being the only thing, you see how much life is taking up space in this moment. And so thank you for joining us. And we look forward to chatting soon. Hope you can join us at a Patreon call or at a retreat, or just here on the live comments. We appreciate all of you joining wherever you are.